The federal Liberals told us in last year's election campaign that there would be modest deficits, followed ultimately by a balanced budget before the next election. Earlier this week, the budget confirmed that is not on. A $29.4 billion deficit in the first year alone and no balanced budget before the next election. What do we think? Well, let's ask. In Ottawa, Armin Yalnizyan, senior economist with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. And here in studio, Ernie Eves, Ontario's 23rd Premier and a former finance minister who brought in 6 budgets for Mike Harris, and Maddie Simiotiki, Associate Professor of Geography and Planning at the University of Toronto. Armin, it's good to see you on the line from the nation's capital. Gentlemen, pleasure to have you here as well. Armin, I want to start with you because just about every economist quoted these days has been saying it's okay for the federal Liberals to run deficits in this year's budget and going forward as well. And I wonder how unusual it is to have that much consensus from people who usually tell us the books have got to be balanced, but apparently not now. Tell us.
Well, I've never experienced it in my entire professional life, which now is almost 30 years of listening to economists opine on public debt. And so it does come as a bit of a surprise, but when you put it in the context of the most unusual recovery from a global economic crisis that we've seen around the world, it's not a surprise. We have now reached the limit of monetary policy, we are told over and over again, without dipping into things like negative interest rates, which create other distortions in financial markets that we're seeing in places like Japan and Europe. And we're seeing that most countries have not adopted fiscal policy in any measure to counteract slowing growth. So this is one of the first governments that is saying, let's give this a try. And frankly, it's a very small try on top of the deficit that was created by a shortfall in revenues because of the astonishing collapse in commodity prices at the beginning of this year. So those prices have recovered a little bit, but we are going to see what not being fixated on balancing the budget does, which is great news, because if that's all we were doing right now, we would definitely be in a recession.
Well, we may have a different view here. Let's see. Ernie Eves, these are non-recessionary times. Technically speaking, we are in, actually by historic standards, relatively buoyant times. Certainly in the province of Ontario, growth rates north of 2.5%. And yet, consensus on big deficits. Is that strange for you?
Well, it's strange for me, but obviously we're in different times than we were when I was in government. But still, all that put aside, I think this is the first time since 1971, if you look at the 2015 fiscal year, first time since 1971 that a government has taken a balanced budget and put it into deficit when we're not in a recession.
Who was the Prime Minister then?
Guess who it was?
I think it was this guy's dad.
Yeah. So this is maybe Just Society 2 taking shape here.
Just Society 2, got it. Maddie, how do you see it?
I see the role of spending, especially on places like infrastructure, as a really important part of this budget. Infrastructure has the capacity to help alleviate some of these slow times that we're experiencing, the sluggish growth. And I think so spending on this infrastructure, getting money out the door initially into operations and maintenance of projects, the unsexy types of investments, I think that's a really sound part of this budget going forward.
Let me follow up with Ernie Eves on this. As a progressive conservative, do you think it's actually inappropriate for a government to run big deficits when it's not a recession?
Well, I think if you have a plan as to how you're going to get to the ultimate goal, and the ultimate goal isn't just balancing budgets. I mean, I hear this all the time. The whole point of balancing budgets and getting surpluses so you have money to spend on things that people need and want in society. That's what democracy and our system of government is all about. It isn't just to say that I have a $5 billion surplus and I used to have an $11 billion deficit. I mean, that's nice, but for example, it enabled us in Ontario to go from a healthcare budget of $17.4 billion to over $35 billion a year. So that's why you try to achieve these goals. I do concede that these are different, these are different economic times for sure. And I agree that infrastructure spending is one sure way that you can help society in the long run and provide some stimulus to the economy. But I question exactly how much stimulus that actually provides to the economy.
Well, let's follow up with Armin on that. It seems to me, Armin, the key question here is if you are going to deficit spend, you'd better be sure the money is going into things that truly make the Canadian economy more productive, more innovative, improving growth rates, et cetera, et cetera. How do we know whether the billions that are being deficit spent in this week's budget are actually going to do those things? How do we know?
I don't think there is any way we know. I think we know after the proof is in the pudding, after we see public accounts on the other side, because we don't know what the multiplier effect is of government spending. It changes over time. It should normally, in a time that is such sluggish growth, have a bigger impact than usual, because frankly, the only thing that's been propelling us through most of this recovery has been either emerging market demands for our commodities or the Canadian consumer. And we're talking a lot about the infrastructure, but they're pumping billions of dollars into purchasing power for people that will be spending every last penny of it on low-income Canadians with children and seniors, very low-income single seniors. So that money will be circulated in the economy too and boost consumer spending. But in terms of what's the impact of the infrastructure build, well, we know that if we don't repair our social housing, which is what's going on now, and if we don't repair and replace some of our stock for public transit, we're in trouble. We will, we still continue to attract people to our biggest cities, and the cities are becoming gridlocked, and it will not be long before people don't want to move to places like Toronto and Vancouver and Calgary, because the cities are not themselves working. For us to maintain our ability to grow the economy, we need to continue to be people magnets. That requires us fixing what we've got.
Maddie, again, I want to get your take on what I think here is the key question, which is how do we know whether the money that's going to go out the door is actually going to do the things that Armin said, as opposed to pet projects for MPs in their ridings, which will give some temporary jobs, but actually in the long run doesn't make the economy more productive, more efficient, and so on.
And that's been the history of infrastructure investment, this pork barrel type of politics. We've seen this right across the country and in fact around the world, building projects that may get politicians elected but don't necessarily deliver the benefits that people want. I think that undermines public trust in investment in infrastructure. I think they see the money going out the door, they don't see the problems being solved, and so they start to have concerns. My view on this is we need to get really hard-headed about how we evaluate projects. We need to be doing much better cost-benefit studies. We need to be doing this on all big projects. It's amazing that some projects go through very careful studies and others have very little analysis of why we do them or what the benefits and costs are actually going to be. And so I think we really need, in this moment now, when we're spending a ton of money on infrastructure, to get really detailed in how we study which projects to invest in, because we need the benefits of them. Our societies need them for the environment, for the economy, for social inclusion and equity. We need to be picking the right projects, or else we're going to be left with a big debt and not the benefits that we were hoping to get from those investments.
North of $11 billion on infrastructure in this budget. How do we know if it's for the right stuff and whether it'll improve the economy at the end of the day?
I don't really think that's a big number. I mean, people are talking about $11.9 billion or whatever it is, $12 billion for the sake of argument.
Sure.
That's spread over Canada over 5 years. I mean, when I was finance minister, there were years when we spent $10 billion in capital infrastructure spending. So $5 billion alone in hospitals and healthcare. So I don't consider $12 billion spread over 5 years to be a significant investment in infrastructure. I think it's a start, but it's certainly not the be-all and the end-all as to solving any economic problem.
Okay, fair enough, but how do you know that the $12 billion is going to go out the door for the right things as opposed to the wrong things?
Well, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, I think you have to do what is needed in society, not what's needed politically 4 years down the road to get the government reelected or to save this seat or that seat, which I think you could look at any political party in the past and see that is the case on occasion, for sure.
Armin, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, I just loved what Mr. Eves said, and it almost begs the question, do you think we're not spending enough on infrastructure and the deficit should have been bigger? That would have been our argument at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. But just going to your point, Steve, of how do we know that we're spending on the right things? Well, a good chunk of the affordable housing budget, which is only like just a little bit more than $2 billion over 2 years, about a third of it is going to First Nations reserves. And we know that the housing problem there is atrocious. So that's long overdue, but it's way not enough for the housing repairs we need in our social housing stock. A lot of our old social housing needs to have new furnaces, needs to have better insulated windows. This fits squarely in the climate change and carbon emission reduction strategy. We should be ramping up spending on this stuff now, not later. We should be doing it now when the cost of borrowing is the cheapest it's ever been in our history, and where we will get the dividends year after year. So it's not necessarily growing the economy, but it's making the growth that we do have smarter and less wasteful.
I actually should give Ernie Eves a chance to respond to that, because Armin did say earlier that she thought this was a small step. A nearly $30 billion deficit was a small step in the right direction. What do you think about the size?
Well, I think that a lot of the spending is program spending. It's not infrastructure or capital spending. $12 billion is capital spending. You look at the $3.4 billion for transit. I mean, the City of Toronto could spend that alone in an instant. So to project that this is going to be the infrastructure program that saves the Canadian economy, I think it is just a step in the right direction with respect to infrastructure. But I do think you have to have a plan as to how you're eventually going to get to surplus, not for the sake of saying that I have a surplus, for the sake of having dollars. When you look out to I think it's 2020 in this budget, the amount that's going to be spent on servicing the debt is going to be about $35 billion a year. That's about 10% of the federal budget. That's a ridiculous waste of money, in my opinion. Think what you could do with that $35 billion a year that they're going to be spending on. And you know, we face the same problem in the province of Ontario. I reflect back to when I was finance minister starting in '95. You know, you went to meetings with Paul Martin and all the provinces were pulling together trying to do the same thing. Now it seems that everybody's going to try to spend their way into prosperity. Bob Ray tried that here in the province of Ontario. It didn't work so well.
Well, interest rates weren't at 1% when
no,
Bob Ray
no,
tried
they
it.
weren't, and interest rates won't stay at 1% either. So down the road, you know, this debt that we're accumulating, the total debt's going to be what, $730-some billion at the end of this? That's a massive amount of money, and a certain amount comes up for renewal every year and has to be refinanced. And when interest rates go up, when they're going down, it's great. But when interest rates go up, you're going to have to pay the piper.
But if I read between the lines, I don't hear you saying that you saw in this budget a plan eventually to get back to balance.
No, there isn't. There isn't a plan to get back to balance. I think the plan is, quite frankly, we hope that the world economic situation will turn around. We hope that oil prices will go up. We hope that, you know, we're going to have a huge increase in GDP, and then we're going to look great. But if we don't, what's the plan?
Armin?
Well, what Mr. Eves is saying really makes me wonder, wouldn't it then be the most fiscally prudent thing to do to float 10, 20-year bonds at current rates and get that infrastructure going now when the cost of borrowing is the cheapest?
I think there's lots of interesting ways that you could look at, promoting infrastructure projects. We started the 3P hospital program. As I recall, the McGuinty opposition opposed that, and then when they got in, they did even more than we had planned to do.
Just change the initials.
But yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, fine if somebody thinks somebody else has got a good idea and they take it, then call it something else. I don't care what they call it. But the reality is that we had the R&D Challenge Fund, we had the infrastructure, we had the Innovation Trust Fund, where we had the public sector, the private sector, and government all participating in a lot of cases, in fact, in most cases, doing huge capital investments. So that $3 billion that we invested as a province turned into about $12 to $15 billion worth of investment.
Maddie, come on in.
Yeah, if I can pick up on that. I mean, I think things like P3s, these are ways of financing infrastructure. This is not a funding scheme. Funding is who actually pays for this infrastructure. And P3s, the private sector might finance you the money up front, but they're not funding it. Governments, for things like hospitals that don't have a long-term revenue stream, governments are ultimately paying for that infrastructure. And so that's what we really need to be understanding. What are the revenue streams coming in to cover these long-term investments that have both capital costs and also operations and maintenance? A lot of what's in the current budget is speaking to the fact that we've deferred maintenance for a long period of time on a lot of our assets. They're now run down. We need to keep them up. We have streetcars that don't run. We have subways that leak. We have all sorts of issues that are now a drag on our economy. And so we really need to understand infrastructure in its full life cycle. And this budget is really a down payment on those investments. It's just the beginning. It's $12 billion out of what was proposed to be $60 billion in new program funding for infrastructure. This is just the start of that program. The budget starts to make that clear, and I think we have to recognize that and keep the Liberals accountable to make that spending over the long term.
But Armin, let's say people thought that, okay, it will make our economy more efficient, more productive, better if we make these investments in infrastructure. I get that. People may not be prepared to go as much into deficit in order to, for example, reduce the guaranteed income supplement that are going to seniors from age 67 back to age 65. They may say, well, how's that going to make the economy more productive? What's the answer to that?
Well, first of all, none of that was going to kick in until the year 2023 anyway, so we're not even talking about this particular cycle. But what it would do is permit people who are actually, unable to find a job at the age of 65 if they're not working and not deferring that extra little bit of money, which is a little bit less than $7,000. It's, per person. It will make or break extreme poverty amongst the sickest and most frail and vulnerable 65-year-olds, amongst whom there are a lot of people that have done hard physical work, whether that's in construction or whether that's in mining or whether that's in nursing or whether that's having been a server for all of your life, being on your feet 8 hours a day. When you get to the age of 65, there's some jobs that you just cannot do anymore. And so we may be preventing actually other healthcare costs down the road, because some people that are just too sick get sicker because they're being forced to work or forced to live on incomes that are really, really low.
Okay, Ernie Eves, let me try this with you. Because you're the one person here who stood for office and been a politician, and so you'd have some insight into this. As a politician, how do you balance the need to make these kind of long-term investments that are going to improve the economy, that will make things more efficient and productive, with the desire, with the political reality, frankly, of having to show people in 4 years, not 25 years, but 4 years, here's what we've done and therefore re-elect us?
Well, it's a delicate balancing act. There's no doubt about it. And you have a lot of political pressure. But then you also sometimes have to do what you think is the right thing, regardless of what the people think. And you either pay the political price for that or you don't, depending on the results at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're lucky. We were fortunate when we were there because things started to pick up in a worldwide economy. And I think a combination of policies that we put into place, the trade balance, the world economy, trade with the U.S., you put all that together and it worked. I'm not saying that policies that we put in place solved all the problems, but it certainly helped. And I think ultimately you want to have your eye on the ball to get to a place where you have an economy that's strong enough that you can afford these things without running up a $30 billion deficit a year. There's no doubt that these social needs are there, and there's no doubt that you'll never have enough money to solve them all in any one particular budget. But I think you do have to have a fiscal plan. It's interesting to me that in this last election, if you looked at, for example, a poll that a survey that Navigator did right after the election, 80% of Canadians fully expected the Trudeau government to balance the books in 4 years' time. Just about that same number really didn't care what their policies were. They could care less. They were voting against Stephen Harper. They were just choosing who was the better alternative. They didn't care what they stood for, what their policies were, but they do have some respect for fiscal integrity and not just continuing to run up a huge debt.
I am smiling at Armin's restraint at the moment, because when she heard you say, we did these things and it worked, I know she wants to get in there, but Armin, you appreciate that's a different show, so we're going to move on from that. In our last few minutes here.
But can I just actually just piggyback on something that Mr. Eves did say?
Sure.
Which is that there is a fiscal anchor in this budget. It isn't a deficit anchor, but it does absolutely speak to the concern of runaway spending and not being able to get your house in order, because they are saying they are going to reduce the debt-to-GDP ratio, which is something that every government has said since Paul Martin in 2003, that they're going to reduce the federal debt-to-GDP ratio to 25%. Well, they can't do it in 4 years, but they're saying they're going to reduce the debt-to-GDP ratio to less than it is now in 4 years, which is an indication that there's an inflection point coming. And if you look at their budget, they actually they spend this year, they spend next fiscal year, and then they spend less money in the next 2 years. They are going to be trimming spending, and that it's not just going to be a growth-driven agenda, but they are really crossing their fingers that what they do in the first 2 years does spur growth and set us on a longer-term growth path that wouldn't have otherwise existed if the government just said, I have to balance my books. That's the prudent thing to do.
Now it's Ernie Eves who's smiling.
Well, they're talking, they're talking about reducing the debt to GDP ratio in 4 years from 31% to 30.9%, 1/10 of 1%. Whoa, that's a huge
But
improvement.
still,
Heading in the right direction,
it goes
though.
up
Well,
in
yes,
the
heading in
meantime.
the right direction. At this rate, it'll only take us 200 years to get there.
Yeah, but who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares? At the end of the day, it's
Who
a
cares?
number.
At the end of the day,
It's a
if you
number.
don't
We're
have
the
a healthy
lowest.
economy, you're not going to
We've got the-
provide these social services that people need because it's unsustainable in the long run.
Maddie, come on in.
I
is-
understand that, but
Go ahead,
I
Maddie.
was just going to say, it is worth saying that governments of all stripes have run up budget deficits over the long term in Canada. And so this isn't just a left or a right issue. I think for me, the key question is, what are we spending the money on? Are we going to be investing this in productive assets that are going to deliver both short-term benefits and the long-term gains?
Do we know the answer to that yet?
And that's what we're waiting for. And that's what I think in the follow-up to the budget, we have to really scrutinize where is the money being spent, which projects are being picked, and how are they being chosen. This is a process issue when you're talking about spending $12 billion on things like infrastructure. What are the processes that are going to be in place to allocate that money smartly instead of it just going to politically motivated projects?
So give us a sort of a clearer sense about that. Subways, streetcars, public transit, infrastructure, water systems, good. What's bad?
All of those are good in the big picture. The question is in the details. How do you pick between one and the other? We do have limited resources. We have to pick between projects. One of the interesting things is that at the federal level, a lot of the spending on infrastructure has been on very small projects. They've been making capital grants to projects of under $1 million. Half of the capital grants over the past decade and a half went to projects that were under $1 million, and 91% went to projects that were under $10 million. They're spending a lot of time and resources allocating money and providing matching grants to small projects. That should be given money directly to the local governments and to the provinces to allocate the big projects, the ones that are really national significance. That's where we should be they should be really putting their emphasis.
But here's where we get into politics. If you do that, you don't get the credit. And credit matters in that business. You have to acknowledge that, right?
I think what we have to try to find is a way that everyone can get credit for putting the right programs in place and then take credit for the collaboration and the work that all of these levels of government are doing together.
Well, that should be, Mr. Eves, easier to do if it's a Liberal on Parliament Hill and a Liberal government at Queen's Park, and frankly, a very, a pink Tory mayor as the mayor of the capital city of Ontario.
Nice guy.
I didn't say John Tory was not a nice guy, but I say there's an ideological simpatico happening among the three of them right now.
Yes, there is. And as a matter of fact, if you look across the country, almost every single province and territory is together the same way we were together in terms of balancing books in the mid to late 90s. But I think it is important that governments pull together on this. But we're going to have to wait and see whether the results of what is being done now bear fruit. I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, that the federal government in this budget is actually looking at putting in 50% of infrastructure dollars in some cases, and I think that that's a step in the right direction for sure.
Okay, Armin, our last
Well, don't
minute here.
forget-
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, don't forget, part of that is because so much of this investment is going to First Nations reserves, where they have 100% of the responsibility.
Fair enough. Armin, I'm going to lose my line to you in about a minute, so let me give you the last minute here just to say, if you're prepared as finance minister to go $30 billion in the red this year in order to get stuff done, does it look to you like they've spent that $30 billion on the right stuff?
It isn't $30 billion that they're spending. They're just not cutting at a time when, if we had governments cutting, it would actually make things worse. It's a revenue problem. It's not a spending problem. 2/3 of that $30 billion is a revenue problem. And that's, Steve, where we're heading actually in the coming years is we're going to have to make, just like we do at the City of Toronto right now, where we've got $22 billion in unfunded projects that we say we want. Part of this is discussing, well, which aspirations are we going to throw away and which are we going to just step up to the plate and fund because this is the future we want for Canada. That's the conversation that's coming.
Is this a spending problem or a revenue problem, Ernie Eves?
I think it's both. I think it's always both. I mean, I'm always amused by the debate whether it's spending or a revenue problem. Sure, you'd always like to have more revenue. And I think what government can do to do that is to make the economic climate such that people want to invest here in the country of Canada. I think one thing they should have done in the budget that they didn't do was the small business tax deduction.
They did not cut that,
for
and they said they
businesses
would.
making less than $500,000 a year. To me, that's an easy step. It represents the overwhelming majority of the Canadian economy. and yet they didn't take that step. And I think they missed the boat on that particular issue.
Okay, we're going to try and get the boat steered in the right direction now. I want to thank everybody for participating in this discussion tonight. Armin Yalnizyan in the nation's capital from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Here in our studio, Ernie Eves, the former finance minister, former premier of Ontario, Maddie Simyaticki from the Department of Geography and Planning at the U of T. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.